welcome back to the channel about art and design. And today I have a guest. We are in my new studio, and this is Ingimar. Ingimar is an artist. He is from Iceland. He is based in London. He mainly designs photographic prints and rugs as well. And we will listen more from him, what he does, and he will answer short questions. Hello, Ingimar.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
So, I know you've been working on photographic prints and designing rugs, but would you like to tell us like how you decided to become an artist and what things you've done?
So I went to like a art foundation high school in Iceland. So I kind of thought that I would probably go into some sort of a creative field. And when there was a decision to make a decision, which schools to apply, I applied for 2 schools, one in Iceland and one in London. I got into both, and I just decided to move to London.
Okay.
And yeah.
And since you moved to London, what have you been doing? What projects you worked on?
So here's the thing, like when I was at school, I was very overwhelmed by the city, and I had this like crazy grandiose ideas about like massive installations. I wanted to be like next to Richard Serra or Robert Eliasson or something. And I kind of realized that I had like no foundation to do that. So instead of just, I had these like crazy ideas about like doing light installations on skyscrapers and working with the river and stuff. But instead of theorizing about that for months and months and months, which I did not do anything, I started photographing the city of London. I started photographing the skyscrapers especially, and then I did an exchange in China. I was in Hangzhou, and I started photographing a lot there as well. I was traveling to Hangzhou. I was mostly staying there, but Beijing, Shanghai as well. And then I went to a birthday party in Las Vegas before my last year at university, and I was photographing a lot there as well. So I had this like mega archive of buildings, and I wasn't really sure what to do with them. So I started collaging them and just see if I could kind of create these patterns and things. And I used to be a musician, and I kind of thought that if I could take this like very simple theory from music, which is basically sampling, and use that into approach it into image making, that could be like a very nice little theory. So I kind of approached architecture in that sense. So instead of building something that's, building something from the ground up, just use the materials that are already there. And so this kind of evolved into my graduation project was based from 3 buildings from Shanghai, Las Vegas and London, and I did a little animation that showed the time difference, and I was very kind of interested in maybe doing a more animation piece. And then after I graduated, I thought a lot what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to have a project that maybe would last for a year or 2, and something that I could just focus on. So I had a couple ideas, and one of those was to use the same approach but just for a whole continent. And it was kind of a bold move. I probably wouldn't have done it knowing how long this took, but I literally spent the next 5 years going to 52 capitals of Europe, always going back and forth, doing it in a couple of trips, then building a studio in Iceland. And from then on, I kind of started doing other things, tiny commissions, but I was also kind of mostly focused on that project. So over the years, I just kind of built this aesthetic of image making, which was pretty much kind of based on this sampling idea. That was kind of my thesis. And then I decided that I'd stayed long enough in Iceland, and 2 years ago almost I moved back to London. At the same year, I was kind of approached by this company, Moi, and they wanted me to do a rug collection with them. And I said yes, and it was kind of based on a design that I already had. So it was for a startup in Iceland that didn't work out. And then all of a sudden, after I started doing the rugs, people literally asked me do you do specially designed works? And I did like maybe one commission work a year or something like that, not a lot. And last year I got approached by this client in Bahrain, and he had like a very specific idea. So I kind of have two different studios a little bit. I have my work, which is kind of based on what I want to do, and I'm kind of the ruler of the kingdom, and I can do whatever I want. And then I have the commissions, especially in the rug. So so he had like, so I was basically there to help him take an idea that he had and make it viable or make it work out visually. And then this year I got approached by a client in London, and it was a similar thing. She had been struggling to find something that fitted for her home, and she just gave me a couple of direct pointers, playfulness, drawing like fonts. This is a bit abstract when you create a rug. And it just happened to be that I had been drawing a lot just on the side because I was so tired of working on the computer all the time. So I had like literally like thousands of pages of abstract drawings. And I was really struggling in the beginning to find a way out, like how to make this work, because this is so totally different than what I've done before. So I just sent her gave her a couple of drawings and said, is this like a direction that we can kind of work on? And she was very happy with that, and that's kind of what we are solving at the moment. And yeah, so that's kind of how I do.
Okay, that's very cool. So can I ask you if you can explain more the Capital series, because it's one of the projects you spent the most time, and it is a huge collection of images. So can you tell us more about the Capital series?
Yeah, so the original idea, it was kind of based on, I set myself a couple of rules. So the first rules was the Capital series, the print edition, which is one collage out of a building from every single Catalan Europe. That's 52 prints. And then I'm currently in the process through developing slightly more of an animation angle on that, and a couple of bigger collages. But yeah, it was just like, when you think about Europe, or you think about, well, Europe is a big continent and it's not really the same, but architecture in its simplest terms has the same purpose everywhere, kind of looks the same, but it's always different. So it's kind of an interesting material to look at, because a skyscraper and a skyscraper looks exactly, it's very similar, but because it's an individual architect that designed it, there's a tiny little differences. So I kind of like that material just to work with, and you know, God knows there are a lot of buildings out there, but you know, when I did the smaller series, I thought it was a bit too of a loose concept. So I kind of wanted to see, you know, when I was in art school, people were using the internet a lot with kind of collage making. There's a lot of YouTube remixes, there's a lot of website remixes and things like that. But I always kind of had this approach that I use my own images. So that was kind of the idea behind this. And obviously in this case, that made me, you know, I literally had to travel to all these places, and that, you know, cost a little bit of money, and it was a bit of a hassle, and it's a lot of stories, you know. I was in, you know, I was in Belarus, I was in Minsk, and Kyiv kind of politically exploded, and 4 days before I was going to go there, the protests started happening, and I literally was kind of advised not to go there. And then I found someone who lived there, and I called him up and I was like, do you think this is a good idea? And he's like, yeah, as long as you just don't go into the protest. And the hotel I was staying in was in the center of Kyiv. On the first day, literally in the first 15 minutes, I walked the wrong direction straight into the protest. So I was probably the only one there with a camera, not photographing, not for this mega international event. But when it comes to traveling, and when it comes to like, is the work about the travel, or is it about the actual image? In this case, it's a little bit about both, because the angle and eventually the work evolves about the photograph and the angle I take. And if I don't take it, I don't have control over that. But yeah, so it's kind of but it's also interesting, you know, just it was a huge education for me, you know, seeing, you know, I didn't only work with blockbuster architects, but there are certainly a lot of nice names in the series, like Daniel Libeskind, Sahadi,
it's a lot of interesting buildings.
Fuxas, yeah.
So, Ingimar, my other question will be more about how you work, because I think the audience also is interested in how artists start a project. Do you write yourself a brief, or if you run into a creative block, what kind of solutions do you come up with?
Absolutely,
Tell us a bit about your process.
It's a really good idea. So it's a really good question, because this project, for example, like I kind of laid down the rules in the beginning, and I kind of had to finish it, and like at the end of it I was just so burned out that I had like absolute zero interest in doing this, but I kind of had to finish it at some point. So it's a good idea to have at least an aim for what you're doing, and especially, but how I, you know, just going back to the Kavla series, is like I literally just have a facade image of a building on a black background, and I start repeating it, and I start moving it, and then eventually things start working out, or they don't work out. And this can take, like, sometimes it just literally takes half an hour, or it takes like 6 months.
So you just dive into the work, basically.
Yeah, so how I work usually, I have a podcast or something to listen to, and then I'm just focused on the screen. I don't look at Facebook or anything like that, and I just, you know, zone in, and like maybe the first hour is bad, maybe the second hour is bad, but eventually things start moving up. But I also save every single change, so I can always go back to see what I did wrong, if I went too far, if I can take this further. And but when it comes to other things, like it is really strange when you, especially in the commissioned pieces, like I've had a formula that a client gave me, and he literally said, like, can you do something with this? I'm not a scientist, I'm a failure at math, I don't understand anything about anything like that. And it's like, and I looked at this and I had like no idea how to work on this. I literally called the university in Iceland and asked them if they knew about this. They had no answers for me. And I ended up Googling it and seeing like a shape that was kind of semi-based on that idea. And I took that shape and I kind of abstracted it into eventually what I used it for. But it's nice. What I like about these kind of works is that when someone else comes to me, with a problem or
something they are looking for.
Yeah, and I'm literally just the facilitator to make this visually work out, basically. But it usually takes my own practice into a better direction, because I've kind of had something fresh to work on, and then I can go back to my own work. It's also, if it's a
challenge, you need to research and maybe teach yourself or learn or ask around to.
Absolutely, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm not afraid to do that. Like, it's just like commissions are what they are. They are commissions, but in reality, I've never had a bad one. I've never had a bad experience with this. So, but it's kind of, but when it comes to like writer's block and things like that, it's really, it's really nice to have a place to work. So you kind of have to go there to work, and it can be in your home or it can be a separate studio or something. And then you also have to decide, this is the time that I'm working. And it's really, really easy not to work. It's really, really easy.
We all know that. Yes.
And it's kind of one of those things that, first hour you're kind of messing around on the internet and stuff, but like, but literally, and if you're kind of going through a phase like that, I would just say, and I think this is, I stole this from someone who was teaching people to write thesis, like essays, is that if you just write like 10 minutes a day, eventually it will end up being 30 minutes a day, but don't force yourself into taking like a full 8-hour slot and just, you know,
and
so,
the same goes for any creative field.
Yeah, but it's also okay to have a week off. It's also okay. I almost had a year off after I finished the project in 2016, and it took me like months to really start again because I just literally didn't enjoy working, and it eventually it came back. But it's also I highly recommend following Rick Rubin on Twitter.
Oh yes, he's great.
It's really nice.
If you are fans of Red Hot Chili Peppers or any good music, Rick Rubin, he's the producer, best guy. He's been in this industry older than both of us, so
50 years probably.
Yeah, he's amazing.
But he has like all these amazing quotes, and like just also art is not the competition, and like all these kind of challenges and like comparison to other people, and there's a lot of ego in this industry, and I'm sure in a lot of other industries, but it kind of at the end of the day it doesn't really matter what other people say, as long as what you're doing you're happy with it, you know.
If you're happy with your work, it's
and I also think people should just chill a bit more. Like this is not like a life or death situation, and you know, the struggle is real up to a point, but if this is too hard, just don't do this. Like,
so I'm just gonna go to my other question. Are there any friends, mentors, people you talk regularly or you look up to their work? I mean, even if you don't know them in person, but who are these people and what kind of contribution they have in your life?
Absolutely. So the artist I followed the most when I was in art school was Ólafur Eliasson, and the main reason for that is because his website was up to date. So you can literally follow anything he was doing. This is like 12 years ago, and still to this day, so many artists, they are not on the internet, and for various reasons, or like Instagram now works way better, but so his kind of studio was very kind of inspiring, of course, and but in terms of my friends, I was very lucky when I was at Chelsea. I met who you previously interviewed, James Harris, and he basically took me under his wing, and we did a collaboration together as a student project that I had. It was for a company here called Hitachi Consulting, and he kind of, so the deal was I never really had an internship with him, but the idea was that he photographed it with me, because he literally said, "You're a horrible photographer, I can do this for you, and instead you'll help me out." And that was a deal. We became very good friends. He's also been in this industry for like a very, very, very long time, and he's been a lot of help, and it's also just paying it forward, which is really, really nice. I have really nice friends in other fields as well, so I also suggest that even if people are graphic designers, product designers, even architects, or the best studio setup I literally had was I've had like big spaces and small spaces in Iceland, and now I'm moving into a shorted studio.
Oh yes, congratulations.
Thank
you. Ingimar is moving to a new studio space next month, and we will hopefully also share some visuals from there, or if you follow him, you will be able to see what he has been up to.
Absolutely,
yeah,
but I literally, so I had a desk inside an architect studio, and they were working on like commission pieces or, you know, buildings and things like that, and I was working on my things, and they could come to me and ask me like, "Oh, what do you think of this building? What do you think of this?" And I could just say whatever I wanted, because I wasn't working there, so it didn't really matter my opinion. I could just be honest, and they could kind of throw stuff at me, but on the, you know, vice versa, they had no other, just, you know, there was nothing
their
for
opinion,
them.
but it doesn't affect what you decide at the end, but it's good to hear different opinions.
Exactly, and it was always very kind of more of a build-up than, you know, trying to talk someone down. But so that was a really nice model, and I kind of recommend that, to be in a studio with people that might not necessarily be working on the same thing as you, but still have like a creative angle, so you can kind of both benefit in a different way.
And my final question, so there was COVID, we all spent a lot of time at interiors, and you did the Blue Reflection series. By the way, Blue Reflection series is based on these blue balls. So it was a collaboration between each other. And yeah, just tell me how that project started and how it's been going, because that's the most recent one, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just saw this at your house. It was kind of beautifully reflected in the sun, and I started photographing it. Really, because at that point, like, you know, there was not much going on, so, you know, it was kind of one of those things that I just thought, like, I'll see if this goes anywhere. And it ended up being this nice, beautiful set of 7 images, and yeah, they are going alright. Yes. They are a small edition, but yeah, there's a lot of interest.
60 by 60 centimeters,
yeah.
And you just sell when people contact you by email or even in Instagram, I believe.
Yeah,
you just give up the information, and then that's usually how it proceeds.
Yeah, like Instagram and art is kind of it's a thing now. So like people are like, Instagram is the new thing. So I literally just started posting it in story when I was developing it, and there's interest, and it's really nice when it's organic like this. And yeah, it's like it's really nice.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing your experience and opinions.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And it's been a pleasure to have you in the studio. So there will be more interviews coming up, but I also do tutorial videos in Turkish mostly. And if you're interested in following this channel, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.